anything that doesn't evolve will eventually die, you know what I mean? And so part of evolving is including, the younger generation in decision making and being open to new ways of doing things.
And I think this merger, it might be beneficial to some people, it might not be, but in all, I think this should stay a black school because we should have a freedom of choice because we came here and this was meant to be a black school. That's all to it.
I think a lot of HBCUs are not stuck in tradition, but I think that HBCU leadership, they just get stuck in doing things the way they've always done it. And I think that holds a lot of schools back.
The leadership has to be someone that you could trust, someone you can hold accountable, and someone that will respect the university's culture and history. And that's another problem too, getting people in leadership who may not even graduated from HBCU period. That can be problematic.
We, the National Urban League, see ourselves as an entity that can convene conversations. We felt it important to convene HBCU presidents to have a conversation about what the challenges were to leading HBCUs and what the opportunities are for HBCUs as thought partners and as leaders in the academic space.
I feel like there's a lot of history behind HBCUs, so they definitely need to spread the word out a bit more and maybe have more people come back and be aware that the school is thriving.
My overall thoughts on some of the leaders that I see in HBCUs is that they are working to lead institutions at a time where they are being constantly questioned.
There needs to be more openness and inclusion as it relates to being progressive, along with maintaining the traditional aspects of the schooling.
I think with a lot of our HBCUs, because a lot of the staff and leadership has been there 30, 40, 50, 60 years, right? They graduated and came right back and been there for the last 50 years. They don't know what's going on.
I think the question of whether or not a leader has been in place too long is something that is challenging to answer out of context. I don't often hear about conversations about whether or not a leader's been in place too long at a predominantly white institution. There are some institutions that might require a leader being in place for a length of time that is perhaps for other people thought to be too long. But I think to consider that question out of context for an HBCU doesn't fully take into consideration what it takes to lead an institution at all.
And definitely give more options for education, not just whatever you're specialized in, but have better programs within other things like art or science. I know it's there, but if they get it out further, maybe that'll get a bit more people in and keep it going for a bit more.
They are often negatively impacted by funding decisions, policy decisions, by accreditation institutions that perhaps don't fully understand what it takes to run an institution that is historically black.
I think they're very fixable too, you know what I mean? None of the issues that HBCUs face are just impossible issues that, we don't have an answer to. No, we know we have good examples of, how a solid admissions office and, how departments run.
Also, too, not to be the nerdy museum person, but also maintaining the archive is so crucial and so important because when Bilal, you're talking about folks who are been in the same, you've been in provost for 40 years, right? So when you leave, all that institutional knowledge goes with that person, and that is dangerous to an institution, especially black institutions.
Young people often speak truth to power. I think that is what, the generation does. The generation that comes next speaks truth to power. And those who are in leadership can be responsive leaders who sometimes can implement what it is that the younger people are asking for, and sometimes have to say, no, not right now.
This iconic place is a shining example of what HBCUs have embodied in this country for over 100 years. Institutions that cultivate leaders who fight for equality, justice, and opportunity.
In order to ensure that HBCUs are around for at least the next 200 years, there's going to be the need for robust financing to fund infrastructure in a robust way that has some longevity to it, to fund Pell Grant funding and other loans that are needed for the populations that want to apply.
Being in Greensboro specifically, you know, A&T is on East Market, and we share a road with Bennett College. So at the time, what I saw in the media was how, you know, Bennett was about to close down, this, that, and the third. And to me, that really just brought to my eyes how HBCUs aren't really supported financially the way that PWIs are.
The history of underfunding and the history of a lack of robust funding for HBCUs that sort of can impact negatively their opportunities to fully educate young people in a way that other institutions that were founded in the 1600s by people who have access to resources don't have to struggle with.
Right now there's 101 HBCUs, but of course we had more. You know, of course Morris Brown closed down, a whole bunch of other schools closed down, so it's just like, why? And I really didn't want that for Bennett, and I'm hoping that they will never be in that situation again. I'm hoping no other HBCU has to be like that again.
Understand that these schools can go away at any moment. And older alum know that if they are not there to shore up our institutions, they will go. And I think for younger folks, we don't feel like that could necessarily happen.
I do think what is needed is more of a reinvestment from those of us who have graduated in HBCUs and those of us who have not, to reinvest and to give back.
Whenever I look at the information in terms of the classes and the giving, why is it always like people who graduated in the 40s? They giving mad money. And you look at like 2018 and you're like, y'all gave $20 collectively, the whole class. Like, stop it.
And not to trash our generation, sorry millennials in advance, right? But I think our generation is, we don't put our actions where our tweets and our social media posts are, right? So somebody will post all day, HBCU made, oh, I'm such and such alum from such and such a school, but you ask them to get a school $10, and they looking at you like, you know, like you just asked them for their whole entire livelihood. It's like, you got $10, you got bundles, your nails done, and you going to brunch this weekend.
It is important and beneficial to all to bring together leaders and researchers and practitioners to hear from each other about what it takes to lead an HBCU in this day and time, and to again share strategies and best practices that can help advance the legacy of those institutions.